Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. The return of the great legends of One Piece could happen, all thanks to a choice made by Gecko Moriah to return to the seas after being defeated and losing his title as a Shichibukai. I hope for your support to help our crew win, and to do so, you just need to click the thumbs up button, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel. By doing this, you will win an incredible devil fruit, so just comment which fruit you want. Guys, Moria has always been that kind of character who seems broken, you know? But at the same time, the way Oda wrote him back in Thriller Bark makes me feel like he's a forgotten ticking time bomb. Maybe he wasn't erased completely because there's still a piece of him that needs to fit into this game. And if I had to imagine how he would come back, it wouldn't be just in any old way. I think if Moria were to reappear, the impact would have to be the same as when he first showed up with that colossal ship, floating with his face stamped on the mast like a warning to the world. Get ready, because darkness is coming. But this time, I can't picture him returning with just random zombies. If he came back now, it would have to be with the great ones. I'm talking about the true monsters, and among them, there's one who hasn't left anyone's mind since he lost his life in Marineford, Whitebeard. Chapter 925 is the first clear sign that Moria is still on the board. When he invades Hachinosu looking for Absalom, you can already tell he's not just a goofy guy anymore, or at least he doesn't want to be seen that way. The first thing that strikes me about this chapter is the fact that he went alone to an island full of outlaw pirates. That's no small thing. The guy who once stopped believing in a crew and chose to rely only on zombies suddenly shows up at the doorstep of Blackbeard's base, someone everyone knows doesn't play around. And even though he's defeated there, what stands out to me is that Teach didn't finish him off completely. Maybe it's because he sees value in Moria's shadow, or maybe he already understands the same thing I do. The Kage no Mi still has the potential to wreak havoc, and in a world where pieces are moving faster than ever, a power that can reanimate the bodies of those who defined entire eras might be a game changer. Just imagine, Moria escapes, or maybe even allies with Teach for a while, but for some reason decides to act on his own. Maybe he has access to preserved remains, hidden bodies, or even graves that no one dared to touch. I think it would be much more interesting if he had a real motivation, you know? Something beyond revenge. What if he wanted to prove that he could be the greatest pirate of all? Not with a living crew, but with one made up of the greatest names who ever lived. Not to conquer the world, but to say, you think the time of these monsters is over? I can bring them back with or without a soul, with or without will, and make you remember who they were, even if it's by force. And that's where Whitebeard comes in. His body, according to chapter 925, wasn't just swept away by the current like many thought. Marco himself says Whitebeard's grave was violated, and no one at Marineford actually saw him being buried. Oda never shows that. That's way too important to be overlooked. Maybe Oda did that intentionally, to leave a door open. And who would be interested in a body like Whitebeard's? Who could actually make use of it? I think only Moria. And if we think further, it's not just Whitebeard's body that might be stored somewhere. There's also Ace. Their graves were shown in chapter 590, but it's just a static image, almost like a postcard to touch the reader's heart. There's no visual or narrative confirmation that the bodies are still there. And Moria, with his ability, doesn't need the soul. He just needs the shadow of someone powerful. And with the world in chaos now, powerful shadows are everywhere. Maybe Oda never intended for Moria to be a comic villain. Maybe he was just being prepared for this moment. Imagine him showing up on a battlefield where pirates from all over the world are fighting, and suddenly, rising from the ground, a colossus in the shape of Edward Newgate appears, empty eyes, flowing hair, holding the Bacento with the same raw strength he had in life, maybe even more, thanks to the shadow powering him. That would be poetic, because the world would see once again the figure of someone who marked an era, but this time without a heart, without ideals, just brute force, controlled by someone who always lived in the shadows of others. And if you think about it, Moria could go even further. I don't think he'd limit himself to just one legend. He could start forming a new kind of Yonku, not through alliances, not with living armies, but with a true museum of legends, where every great name that ever died would be back, walking, fighting, acting according to his will. Oars himself, who was once called the Continent Puller, was used by Moria before. So now, with more experience, maybe Moria would go after even bigger things. Maybe he could recover the body of rocks. Maybe that's why Zabek's face has never been shown. Maybe Oda is holding that back because the reveal of his face will come along with something much bigger. And maybe it'll be Moria who brings that face into the light. Now imagine, Whitebeard, Ace, Oars, maybe even Roger if his body is ever found. You know what all of them have in common? The impact their return would cause. It wouldn't matter if they came back empty. controlled, without memory. Just their presence would shake the foundations of the world. And maybe that is the true treasure of the Kaga no Mi. It's not just about raising bodies, it's about resurrecting memories, wounds, traumas. Moria could be the only one capable of bringing the dead back not through their souls, but through their symbolism. He could make the world face its ghosts. And here's a detail I love to think about. The shadow used to revive someone doesn't have to belong to that same person. This was shown multiple times in Thriller Bark. The body was one, the shadow was from someone else. So maybe, just maybe, Moria doesn't need to find Whitebeard's actual shadow to bring him back. Maybe he finds someone with similar strength, someone with a haki or a will strong enough to animate that body almost identically. And that opens the door to countless possibilities. Who has a similar strength? Who inherited that man's will? Maybe one of his sons, maybe even a rival. And what if Moriah put Weevil's shadow, for example, into Edward's body? It would be like the son giving life to the father. Is it macabre? Yeah, but it's also poetic. Because maybe, deep down, that's all Weevil ever wanted, to feel the weight of that legacy in a real, tangible way. And that's when things start to spiral out of control. Because if Moria can pull this off, who's left to stop him? The Marines? They're already overwhelmed. The Yonku? They're too busy trying to destroy each other. The government? Maybe even they would want Moria on their side, using that power to keep the world in check. And what if all of this has been orchestrated for a long time? What if Moria has been waiting for the right moment to unleash those shadows? What if he already has an entire island hidden in darkness where he stores those bodies like chess pieces, ready to be moved? I think Oda's greatest trick with Moria was making us forget about him. While everyone was watching Kaido, Luffy, and Shanks, Moria was there, in the shadows, literally. Maybe his grand return isn't just about power. Maybe it's about the fear he can create. The fear that the dead aren't resting. The fear that legends can be manipulated. The fear that even history itself can be rewritten with an empty body and a borrowed shadow. And if that happens, the world will never be the same. And that's why, if Moria really is moving behind the scenes, the next war won't just be between the living. It'll be between eras. Because unlike any other character we've seen so far, he carries the power to collapse the emotional timeline of everyone who witnesses his rise. An army of legendary bodies, soulless, relentless, powered by hand-picked shadows, would be the equivalent of making the entire world face its own past as a lethal weapon. And that's when it really starts to hurt. Imagine Marco seeing Whitebeard's body moving again, but with a shadow he doesn't recognize in his eyes. Imagine Sabo facing Ace once more, but without the words, without the smile, only the power. How do you fight someone who was part of your reason to live? And how do you defeat something that doesn't feel pain, that has no moral limits, that is, at its core, a reflection of what you loved or feared the most? The emotional war Moria could unleash is greater than any attack from Akainu or scheme by Emu. And maybe that's exactly what he's waiting for. The moment when everyone is so distracted by today's battles, no one notices what's rising from the past. And what if, in the middle of a decisive fight between the government and the revolutionaries, or between the Yonku and the Marines, the ground suddenly splits open, and one by one, the giants of the past start to emerge. No warning, no announcement, just the silent, towering presence of everything we once thought was over. In that scenario, Moria wouldn't just be a returning villain, he'd be a catalyst, an agent of chaos with purpose, the embodiment of what happens when you ignore the shadows for too long. And maybe then we'll finally begin to understand what Oda has been saving for the endgame. Because reviving legends isn't just a battle strategy, it's a direct confrontation with legacy. It's forcing the world to look into the eyes of what it built and decide whether to kneel again, or finally find the strength to bury the past for good. But until then, Moria's silence may be the scariest thing of all. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.